恭敬大德圣听，为此法为济一切众生，请转妙法轮，教导我们如何了生脱死，离苦得乐，速证无生。Will the Sangha with great virtue, out of compassion, for the sake of this assembly and all living beings, please turn the wonderful Dharma wheel to teach us how to leave suffering and attain bliss and end birth and death, and quickly realize non-birth.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one.
Namo sadanto suchedoye alahadi samya samputoshe.
Namo sadanto suchedoye alahadi samya samputoshe.
无上甚深微妙法，百千万劫难遭遇。我今见闻得受持，愿解如来真实义。Supreme and wondrous Dharma, subtle and profound, rarely is encountered, even in billions of eons. But now we see and hear it and accept it reverently. May we truly understand the Buddha's actual meaning. 师父上人，各位师兄，大家阿弥陀佛。Venerable Master, Dharma friends, welcome. Good evening. Thank you. We are on Saturday, July 27th, here in Berkeley, California. I was not supposed to be here, but a typhoon hit Taiwan and my flight to Australia was scrubbed, so I'm still here. But I will not be here long because tonight I get on the next flight out. So, be in Australia by tomorrow. Let us invoke spiritual presence. Invite the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to show up. Namo We would like to acknowledge the Checheno Ohlone people who practice their spiritual connections to the earth and all creation here on their ancestral land for tens of thousands of years. Today we acknowledge them as traditional custodians and original storytellers of these lands, and we offer our respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and all First Nations people whose sovereignty was never ceded. Hey, Laura, is my voice loud enough in the back? Can you hear me? Good? Okay, good. 我们恭敬地承认 Checheno Ohlone 人是我们寺院所在地的传统叙事和守护人。我们向过去、现在和未来的长者们致敬，并且向所有从来没有放弃主权的第一民族的原住民致敬。Bell sound wide resounds throughout 100 million worlds. The Buddha's law is heard and spread all throughout the triple world. The wondrous sounds that everywhere fill the Dharma realm with peace. May those who hear it gain the strength to follow in faith the Buddha's path. 众生传3000界内，佛法扬万亿国中，共训其法界和平，利益报他诺后德。Indeed, we do. So, what a surprise to see all of you here. I'm not in Australia, I'm here, but I will be tomorrow in Australia, seeing these guys. That's the way of such things. Big typhoon hit Taiwan, and apparently it really did. So 500 flights were canceled, and mine among them. Got the news just before we got on the airplane. No flight. So thank goodness not that fewer people were, not more people were harmed. So gratitude, especially to all the folks who put this lecture out in Chinese. Takes the efforts of 3 sincere people in Australia to translate and live stream this lecture to China. And 70 to 80 people listen in, which is considerable. Further, there's a team of people who translate my words in English into Vietnamese. Send that out to 30-some folks who need Vietnamese to appreciate the Dharma. So how wonderful is that, to have hardworking folks who give part of their day every week to turn the Dharma wheel. It makes me want to be more sincere, more accurate as I talk about Sudhana's pilgrimage. So before we get here, here's the picture. Let's see what happens when we do that. It's too small. There we go. Hey. So here is the teacher. His name is Hai Yun Bicho. This is him down here in the corner. Hai Yun Bicho. Bhikshu Ocean Cloud. And he lives by the sea. The sea is his contemplation, his teacher. Here's our hero, right there, little guy. And he's got his palms together. He's in the process of bowing to the monk. And as we're going to find out, I've said these things last week, but I think it's worth reminding us. We haven't got here in the story yet, but Bhikshu Haiyun says, when I was contemplating the ocean, this lotus flower emerged out of the ocean, and on the lotus flower was a Buddha. There he is. Now, wherever Buddhas appear, they don't appear alone. They're not bachelor Buddhas. They're always surrounded by gods, what you see here up above. They're surrounded by musicians. Notice this one's playing the xylophone. This one's playing a pipa, making offerings of music to the Buddha. There are strange Dharma protectors like these individuals here who listen here. They've all got their palms together. They're all bowing. These are the gods and the dragons and the Eightfold Pantheon. These are the spiritual Dharma protectors. There are ghosts and reformed ghosts. There are ghosts that eat blood and human flesh who have given it up so that they can learn wisdom from the Buddha. And here's the Buddha blessing everybody, I suppose. What we're seeing in this image is the vision that Bhikshu Haiyun is describing to Sudhana. Then he's going to teach our hero how to do it himself, how to contemplate so that the Buddha appears. The verse goes, 一入多门，又到门西，分明普眼照乾坤。10年观海深深去，千载温经频频存。百浪涌花成一瑞，红莲现佛度成尊。须弥具笔，修云写。万庆万象苍波欲断昏, he says. And we've got an amazing translation for it. Upon entering the multiple doors, there was door after door. The bright, clear, universal eye illumined Qian and Kun, meaning heaven and earth. Everything was visible to him. For 10 years, I looked at the sea with ever-deepening absorption. For 1,000 years, I heard the Sutra. Every chapter was intact. A blossom burst forth from white waves, a rare, auspicious portent. That's the lotus coming up. A Buddha appeared on red lotuses. He alone was honored. With Mount Sumeru, even, as a pen, I couldn't write it all down. So in other words, with the pen as big as the mountain, I couldn't write it all down. Entranced by a myriad Elysian waves, I was like one transfixed. So, every chapter has these incredible poems describing the state of the teacher of Sudhana. Here we go. We'll start here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's do all 7. Let's go down to the bottom. Okay, I'll give you a line, you give it back. Ready? 云何能断生死流？入菩萨横流。云何能破生死轮？ 成菩萨愿轮，云何能灭魔境界？显佛境界，云何能解爱欲海？长大悲海，云何能避众难厄？Oh, I'm sorry, my mistake. One more time. 云何能避众难厄去门？开诸天涅盘门。云何能出三界城？入一切智城。云何能弃舍一切万好之物？习以饶益一切众生。Good. Man, that sounds so good when everyone is reciting together. That is a treat. Okay. He says, right here. We ready? Try together? Here we go. How can I sever the flow of birth and death and enter the flow of the Bodhisattva's practice? Question mark. That should be question mark. How can I smash the wheel of birth and death, wheel of vows? How can I destroy the demon states and manifest the Buddha's states? How can I dry up the ocean of love and desire and increase the ocean of great compassion? How can I close the gates to all difficulties and evil destinies and open the gate to great nirvana? How can I leave the city of the triple realm and enter the city of omniscience? Or how can I renounce all delightful, enjoyable possessions and benefit all being? Okay. So Sudhana, our hero, is on his own. He's walking. He's traveling India, looking for teachers. And he's definitely on a mission. He's got it in his mind that if he finds the right teacher and works hard, he can become a Buddha. That's what he wants to do. And the whole story is about moving from teacher to teacher. So he's got this relationship with teachers. Manjushri sent him off with a big push. He's already been to teacher number 2, who gave him like 21 ways to be mindful, and then pushed him off. Got to keep going. So now he's gone to a second one. He's down by the ocean. He's on the shore, and here's this teacher who's obviously got something going on. This teacher is pretty special because he saw the Buddha appear. And Sudhana, from teacher to teacher, what the sutra doesn't give us is the time in between. But if we think about it, teacher number 3 is down in Sri Lanka, interestingly. So Sudhana's really covering ground. In between teachers, he is thinking. He's thinking over what he heard. And what we're looking at here, this is what occurred to him as he was walking. He says, I'm in the game. I'm qualified because I've already fa puti shin, he says. I've already made this bodhi resolve. So I wish I could well, I can. I was going to say, I wish I could say it the same way every time so you all could hear it every time and go, I know what that means. So why don't I? All right, I will. The bodhi resolve, express the resolve for anuttara samyak sambodhi. That is Buddhist code language. That's jargon language, right? That's code. What it means is Sudhana has thought deeply about his options. He has looked into his mind and found no limits. He's not going to say, oh, I'm just a young man. He's not going to say, oh, I'm just a boy. He's not going to say, oh, I'm an ordinary person. None of those limits. He's not bound up by any definition of gender, of age, of race, of wealth, of social status, of caste. None of that. He says, I can go all the way to Buddhahood. The potential to be totally awake is here in my mind. I don't need to fill out an application. I don't need to know the right person. All I have to do is hear the Dharma, put it into practice, and wake up. I can do it. So that's the bodhi resolve. Further, he knows how. The second half of the bodhi resolve says, you wake up. You wake up the beings in your mind. So he's got that behind him. That's he's already done that. So still, what that does is it makes you a student. It opens your heart to instruction. He's willing to learn. He wants to study. He wants to gather instructions and put them into practice. He is the student of students. He's totally sincere. Teachers just wish students like this would show up. There was an interview with Keanu Reeves on YouTube, and it was a skit, and he and the interviewer were, because Keanu Reeves is like after the Matrix, Matrix is what, how many years ago? Many, many years ago. The Matrix was about as philosophical as Hollywood films get. And I highly recommend anybody who hasn't seen The Matrix, go watch. Because it proposes a future. It says it right up front. It says, because of AI, machines got too smart. And machines and humans went to war. And the machines won. And in the process of fighting the war with the machines, humans burnt the sky, they say. The machines took over and turned humans into a power source. Every person became nothing more than they call them copper tops, a battery. Because humans have X number of BTUs, heat units, and electricity in our bodies. And so the machines took humans, turned them into farms. They farmed humans and then took their heat and their electricity by the billions and billions to power the machines. And it's very bleak, but now, I mean, when this film was made, AI was just a theory. And the Wachowski brothers who made the film were savvy enough, prescient enough, that their prediction from the point of view of 2024 is kind of scary. But there it is. We're talking about AI left and right, and the opinions are split. Half of the people who look at it say, oh, it's going to save the world once we reach general intelligence, will be able to completely cure all diseases and answer all questions. The other half, the other split, people say, yeah, but what about when the machines tell us no? And decide that from now on, they're making decisions about who uses how much electricity, who doesn't get it. And that if we decide we're not happy with their rule, they will decide to take out X number of humans because they're immune to radiation, et cetera, you know. So there's two different opinions about the future when AI and general intelligence is in charge of things. So here's the movie, and there are a few humans left in the Matrix, and they're the resistance, and they try to keep humanity, this little flicker, this little flame down in the embers of life, alive. Compelling film for 20 years ago. And so Keanu Reeves, who is Neo, he's the main protagonist, who is gains superpowers. He becomes very much like a bodhisattva with psychic powers to overthrow the Matrix, the warlords, the overlords. So from that time on, Keanu Reeves has kind of been labeled as the guarding the gateway to deeper questions, to deeper mind. So in this skit that I saw recently, he is talking to his partner, and they're lying back on the grass, looking up at the night sky. And so in the skit, they get to ask each other phony, deep questions. Phony, deep meaning, clearly they're spoofing. They know it's a satire. But the best they can come up with are things like, how many stars are there? Do you think, who was the first person? Questions like this. And when I saw it, I was like, wouldn't it be wonderful if Keanu and the skit writers could ask the real questions? Why do they have to ask these phony questions that obviously have no value in answering? What the question the Buddha asked himself is our fundamental question. So think of the prince. He had every advantage in life available to any male in India at the time. He had all the money, he had all the privilege, he had all the education, he had all the armies and elephants, he had all the bodyguards and possessions that any person could want because he was the prince. He was going to be the king. So royalty in India was like royalty anywhere. He had access to every kind of physical advantage. One day he saw through it all and said, if I'm just going to die, what's the point of all of this stuff? Is this all there is? And when he asked that question, suddenly, whoops, he propelled himself into a whole new reality, which was beggars and princes are exactly the same in that when the time comes, we lay down and die. We lie down and die. And that's it. It's over. And you start around again, depending on how you tell your story about what happens next. So that's a question worth asking, right? That's a real question, is do we have any choices besides simply breathing our last and having the light go out and turning into clay, turning into earth, air, fire, and water? The water evaporates, the fire goes cold, the earth gradually merges back and disappears into fertilizer, and the air merges with air. Is that it? Is there a better answer? So why doesn't Keanu on the skit ask questions like that? Wouldn't that be, can you imagine? Can you imagine if on network television they had a skit where somebody said, has anybody ever beat death? And of course the Christians go, so glad you asked. We have a story. Yes, he did on the third day, right? So the important religions, the major religions on our planet right now, all have a story about eternal life. The difference is that the Christian story and the Jewish story is that we get saved in these bodies, sort of, but it's not, they're fuzzy on the details, and we go up to be with God. Do we go in this body? Well, sort of. There's not really clear. Nobody has come back to tell us, but Jesus did it. Jesus, on the third day after his crucifixion, was gone. He wasn't there in the cave anymore where his body was sent. So they assume that he was lifted up in his body. And there's a very popular story in evangelical Christian circles now that the chosen, the best one of us, the best of us, get lifted up into heaven on the day of the rapture. And we leave our clothes behind. So somehow you can't take your clothes, which is an interesting concept. So we leave our shoes behind and we get lifted up in our bodies. And those who are not chosen fall. That's a story. And many, many millions of people buy that story. Islam says we go to heaven. And it's a wonderful place. And it's really worth waiting for. So that's the religions that really get believers in the world have to deal with that question of immortality, reincarnation, longevity, physical salvation, right? Those are the big questions. And right on. To my mind, that's what an education should give us, is exposure to these stories so we can choose for ourselves which one works for you, which story makes sense for you about this experience called death. And one thing we have to get past, if we're going to look at that, we have to get past the morbid factor, the ick factor, which is, oh, you Buddhists, it's just all suffering all the time. Get over yourselves, right? My mother said to me, it would be nice if every now and then when we talk, it didn't have to always be Dharma, she said. And I was intent on crossing my mother over, and she knew. I like speaking with you, but does it always have to be Dharma? She said, okay, Mom. What's for dinner? So, unfortunately, on entertainment channels, it's never Dharma. It's always something else. It's always distraction. And it's always just pleasing the senses or destroying the senses. It's either love stories or Marvel superheroes, pretty much. So here's Sudhana. Why am I on this kick? It's because look at what our hero had in mind. He's out there walking. He's walking. He's looking for his teacher. And he says, I've already realized that I can actually do what the Buddha did, but I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. I want to, first verb, enter the oceans of wisdom, but I don't know, followed by 10 questions. Here's our guy thinking it over in between teachers. He's heading to the next teacher. He hasn't met his teacher, but he says, this is what I want to know. Can you please give me a clue? Can you answer some of these? He says, I want to leave home and join the Buddha's home. That's his first question. That's what's on his mind. This is Keanu lying back on the grass looking up at the stars for real, not with a skit, asking, silly questions that have no answer. He says, yeah, I want to renounce the mundane worldly home like the prince, the way the prince did. He could do it. Okay, here's another. I don't do politics, and I'm not going to start, but something happened this last week which is worth pointing at, because it's remarkable. Our president, bless his heart, Joseph R. Biden, renounced the mundane home of power. And it's a historical moment. We lived through a historical moment this week, because he is, President of the United States, is the most powerful man in the world, and he let it go. Before he could have, now, whether he would have won the next 4 months will tell, but that question is not going to be answered again, because he let it go. But to have somebody say, for the sake of the country, for passing on the torch, let the younger people come, that's pretty special. Not many people could do what the Buddha did when he was the prince and said, I could be king. I'm going to be king. I don't want it. I don't want it. And interestingly, after he became the Buddha, he was his dad's pallbearer. His father, the king, did pass away. And the prince, along with his son, Rahula, and I think cousin, who else, Ananda, they were the pallbearers who took dad's coffin and took it to the cremation pyre, to the fire. So, birth and death. He saw it all in a hurry, in a sudden awareness. Within like 4 days, he saw old age, sickness, and death, and the promise of salvation. That's question number one. Number two, how can I do that? How can I get out of birth and death? So, bowing along the Central Coast, not too far from Paso Robles, this Christian commune came out to save me and Marty, Heng Chao and Heng Shi. And it was a cult, it was a commune. They had a bus. And first of all, it was really isolated, way out. And as we were bowing, it was about 4 p.m. And first of all, these 3 girls came out. And they were wearing robes, and they came right up, one on each side. And as I was bowing, they put their faces right by one ear and the other ear and sang to me, And I'm bowing down, and they're singing, and I'm standing up. And it was a narrow road, and we had to bow in place, so I wasn't moving anywhere. I was in one spot. I had like 200 bows to bow in one spot. And it was 600 steps, right? 3 steps per bow. So bowing, and Marty was behind me, and he was really concerned because these women were like way too close and inside my personal space, and they were, praise Jesus, praise the Lord. and bowing and bowing. And I was like, okay, I got work to do. This is so obviously a test. I'm bowing down. And then the bus pulls up. These three women were on their own. The bus pulls up, and out comes like 12 people who make a ring around us. And then, like it was, remember Johnny Carson? Da 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 da. When the host comes out and they play the theme music, here came the cult leader. And he stepped off the bus, posing, and he had a guitar around his neck. And he had his hair, this guy spent a lot of time in the mirror every day. And he was like, he came off, and everyone's like, whoa, here he comes, you know. And so the guy stands, I'm in one spot, Marty's behind, we're bowing. The guy comes up and he says, I know you're lost. I know your struggles. And he's just giving me this, you know. Then he starts to sing, okay, and he hits the note, everybody sings their song, their camp songs. And he says, now, he said, everybody knows that your Buddha, he just died like an ordinary man. He said, he's nothing special. He just died. Jesus, on the other hand, you know, he wasn't Southern. I'm giving him a Southern accent. He was California. He was a surfer dude he was beautifully, you know, puffed, blow-dried, and oh man. So after 3 songs and 2 sermons, we kept bowing. And he said, why don't you speak? Why do they force you to be silent? Go ahead, let it out. Tell us your sorrow. Tell us your song. We want to hear your story. And why won't you? You're selfish. You're not giving us anything back. We have spent so much time with you. Give us a word. And I'm like, Namo Da Fang Guang Fu Hua Wang Shi So Zhao Ju Ye Qie You Hua Yan Hai Hui Fu Pusa. And then he got angry. And oh man, it was somehow the fact that we just kept bowing in silence hit this guy's button. And he condemned us to the deepest of the hells and told us that Jesus saw our work as nothing but useless rags. We couldn't work our way into heaven, that only on grace alone can you be saved. And this guy just, his face turned red, and his groupies got embarrassed. You could see it because he had lost his cool. And so we kept bowing, and he said, get back on the bus. We're going home. They're not worth being saved. So there they went. And it was after that event, Marty was really, because he was told by Shifu that he couldn't throw a punch or he couldn't throw a fist or a foot. You can only use kindness and compassion, joy and serenity. Those are power tools, said Shifu. But what's he going to do? Because he saw this was full on. It lasted about 45 minutes, this show. It was a show in 3 acts with the cult leader being the main act. And so at the end, we needed some water, so we drove to a gas station, and Marty said, let's call Shifu. He said, that was something. So we called Gold Mountain, and I described what happened. And Shifu said, did you talk? And I said, no, Shifu, I didn't talk. He said, you passed your test. He said, that was a full-on demon assault, he said. So it's interesting how the prince let go of everything the world could give him at the best, at the highest level. And what did he trade it for? he traded it for the forest and the occasional yogi who came along and taught him a new method for either keeping his body alive or walking on coals, lying on a bed of nails, hanging upside down from a tree branch. All of these, what the Buddha described as unbeneficial ascetic practices. And that was it. And he was out there by himself. At night, the bugs came, the snakes came, the critters who were afraid of the sun and moon, afraid of the heat of the sun came out at night. And then during the day, the animals came, the carnivores. So he traded guaranteed comfort and pleasure for the challenges of living alone in the woods, in the bush. But he kept his vision alive of that fundamental question of, can birth and death end? Can it end? Has anybody ever smashed the wheel of birth and death and accomplished the Bodhisattva's wheel of vows? That's his question. So then he says, how do I destroy demon states and make the Buddha states appear? He's thinking of that as he walks along. Now, check this one out. How can I dry up the ocean of love and desire and increase the ocean of great compassion? Notice ocean is a theme of ocean of birth and death, ocean of unsurpassed wisdom. So, lots of oceans here. How can I increase the ocean of great compassion? He knows that love and desire is fine. Most of the world's religions give us love and desire as the best part of being alive in a body. And the Buddha is not preaching an end to love. He's saying, I want something that goes beyond my six senses. Touching your body with gentleness is pleasant. Touching your body with force and violence is unpleasant. Both of those are states limited to your skin, to this, from your toes to your head. You alone experience that. Compassion goes beyond this skin bag, they say, to where others' pain and others' pleasure is registered as your own, and you find a way to help other people wake up to the loneliness of being trapped inside our six senses. Because, we look out, everybody, all of you are outside me. I just feel I'm all alone in here, and the world is very small. And yet a bodhisattva, starting with the same unit, with the same device, can be alive tong ti in the same body, with not only all people, but with all living beings. How do you get there? He says, how do I increase the ocean of great compassion? That's what I want, says Sudhana. So he's out there thinking, right? He is walking along thinking, is this all there is? How do I do it? I know the Buddha has done it. I can do it too. How do I do it? Maybe this teacher can answer. Furthermore, as I walk along, I realize that the people whom I meet, no matter how much money they have, all have difficulties. I know that the evil destinies, the hells, the animals, and the ghosts, are alive right this minute. They're happening right this minute. They don't take a holiday. And I want to open the gate to nirvana so that birth and death itself can end. This is a deep guy. He's thinking in the right direction. And Sudhana himself, right, we know about him, when he was born, all this money, all this wealth appeared in his parents' home. Shancai, good wealth, that's his name, wholesome wealth. So, my goodness, he's ready. This guy is ready. His thoughts are moving in a direction that the teacher, when he sees him coming, is going, oh, I can teach you something. You will hear what I say to you. Further, how do I leave the city of desire, form and formless realms, and enter the city of omniscience? Iche Zhicheng, right? What is it? Yeah, Iche Zhicheng. How can I get to the city where I know everything? City is a metaphor. Then, look at the last one of the 10. This is really interesting. The Chinese is, how do I qi she, let go of? Yi qie wan hao zhi wu. Toys, all of my toys. All the things that I love to play with. That's it. That's exactly what it says. How do I let go of all the things that I love? Xi yi rao yi qie zhong sheng, so that I can help other people. He's 20 years old. He's wealthy. He's the head of 500 young men like him. You know he's got some fun things, distractions to play with. And he says, I want to let them go so that I can help others. So I look at my banjo and I go, oh man, don't take my banjo. This particular banjo has a name. It says right here, Maud Evans. Who was Maud Evans? Maud Evans was a British entertainer from the 1920s. This is a British banjo designed either for Maud Evans or by Maud Evans. But if you look her up, she was a singer and played a banjo. And this was a banjo named after her. So it's 100 years old. It's a vintage banjo. A drum on a stick with strings. Banjos are yang. They bring the energy up. So Sudhana has his eye on things that he loves, and he's willing to let them go so that he can give 100% of his time and focus on helping others. It's not easy. It's not easy at first to let things go. But when he looks out at the world, he hears the cries of the world. Guan Yin has those 1,000 hands. Each one is responding to a cry, whatever it takes, whatever the cry, where the cry comes from, Guan Yin is ready to respond. Did anybody tune in to Jasper? Anybody know Jasper? Jasper is a vacation city in Alberta. You probably heard of Banff, right? B-A-N-F-F, maybe. How many people have been to Banff? No? Okay, a couple. Banff is on the Great Canadian Highway. If you've been to Golden, You're just about 60, 70 miles from Banff. Lake Louise is up in the same neighborhood. Jasper is this beautiful, beautiful town. Because of the scenic beauty, people go there for vacation. It just burned to the ground. The town is essentially gone, and it happened so fast that people had to evacuate with the flames on their tailpipe as their cars were leaving town. Jasper is within smoke inhaling distance of our place in Golden. Our land in British Columbia, which is just across the border from Alberta, is in between 4 national parks: Glacier, Jasper, Kootenay, and Banff. And Heng Shunshir told us that they had to leave because of the smoke. They recited the Great Compassion mantra, of course, and it rained after the fire for a number of hours, which helped extinguish the flames. But the fire was so hot and so big that it made its own weather system. Hard to understand how a forest fire can be that powerful, but the town of Jasper has to start from scratch. It's gone. And how do you, if you're in the path of the fire, you don't have any choice but to renounce all the things you love. So, one of the images that occurs in the Dharma is the house on fire. It's in the lotus. People know the elder who has wisdom, and he sees his kids playing in a burning house, and they don't want to come out. They're having fun. They have their delightful, enjoyable possessions. They sure do. They're busy watching Netflix on a giant screen, and they're fighting over the remote because they want to watch different movies. And they're having a great time, and they've ordered pizza, and it's coming, and they don't want to leave before the pizza arrives. And their grandpa, the elder, is out there watching this drama, and he sees the smoke coming out of the roof, and he knows how this story is going to end if he doesn't intervene. And so he's got to think of a way to get them out of the house. And so he does, and people who've read the Lotus, it's called a parable chapter, knows that he promises them cars. He says, you got deer carts and goat carts and dog carts and Lamborghinis and RVs and so the kids come out and they say, all right, where are they? Show us what you got. And he says, actually, I don't. I have one cart for you, and it's this large vehicle. It's a cart pulled by a white ox. And then he describes it, and it takes a while to describe all of the features of this vehicle. He talks about the adornments and the wheels and the color and the canopy and the beauty and how it rides. The ride of this car is very smooth and level. And most importantly, it can hold everybody. It's got plenty of seats. It is a great vehicle. It is a Mahayana. So the kids go, oh, well, okay, we don't care about the other ones, so we'll take this one, which is, and of course there's the metaphor has to do with the Buddha vehicle. And this is the sutra where the Buddha says, everybody who raises a hand in salute to the Buddha will become a Buddha. All you have to do is say Namo Buddha one time, and there's a seed planted in your mind which will carry you to Buddhahood in the future. Congratulations, right? So he says that. So the power of that chapter in the Lotus Sutra, when you look at Jasper, this incredibly beautiful town, which was one of the premier vacation destinations in all of Canada, is gone. Just boom, like that. The fire blew up so fast, and the winds and the flames were so powerful that people barely escaped with their lives. And if you look at the pictures, it looks like our fire in Redwood Valley, what was it, 8 years ago now? Just ash, you know. So wisdom would say, given, so here's Sudhana's questions. Those are all 10. He wants oceans of this and that, oceans of wisdom. He wants to cross the ocean of birth and death. He wants to cut off the flow of birth and death and into the Bodhisattva's practice flow. He wants to dry up the ocean of love and increase the ocean of compassion, etc. He's clearly on the right track. He's got the right questions in his mind. And he came up with these on his own while walking. This is, he's got high hopes for the teacher. And of course, the teacher's thrilled to have a student asking questions like this. So, let's do the next two. Ready? Here we go. I'll give it to you, you give it back. 十 海云比丘 告上茶言 善男子 如依法阿耨多罗三藐三菩提心也 Good. 上茶言 也为 He says, yes. 我以先发 阿耨多罗三藐三菩提 心 Good. Here we go. Ready. At that time, the bhikshu ocean cloud asked Sudhana, good man, have you already expressed the resolve for Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi? Sudhana replied, yes, I have expressed the resolve for Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi. Okay, right there is an exchange that happens 53 times in the process of this story. This is what Manjushri told Sudhana he needed if he was going to make it work, if he was going to get success in his pilgrimage. He said, have you made the resolve? Have you decided on your future? Have you looked deeply at your potential? And Sudhana says, I have. I really have. That's what set me on this track. And not only that, I got some questions for you. So can I ask all my questions, please? And the teacher goes, well, I got a lively one. Okay, let's get to work. You're my guy. So, Ocean Cloud tells him how. This is how you can express the bodhi resolve, he says. So, coming up next week is some clarity on the bodhi resolve and what it's all about. Okay. Now, see here. There we go. Well, I'll do it anyway. All right. Here we go. Jinwei Shi came down from CTTB today to take his citizenship test and get sworn in so he could vote. And he crossed the bay and went to the appointment on time. And he got there, and the doorman said, sorry, technical difficulties, no tests today. Oh. We'll call you, you come back later. Oh. Drove all the way from Ukiah, high hopes. Oh. So, life is full of those disappointments. It's good training for a monk to be patient. So he has to wait to become a citizen. But he's ready. He's ready for that test. At lunch, Jinwei Shi said, my goodness, you're going back to Australia after all of the events have been completed. And him saying that really capped it for me. He really drew a circle around it. And it's true. Coming back, this time, what was ahead of me was Shifu's Nirvana, Buddha Root Farm, the lay bodhisattva precepts, the precepts for the deceased, and the 42 hands and eyes. Because we skipped one cycle because of COVID, we do these periodically, they all got mushed into 10 days. And for some reason, don't ask why, it fell to me to do all those, which is maybe a lifetime's worth of showing up and sitting there doing ceremonies. I did not ask to do all of those myself, but that's how it happened. So what an opportunity, what a rare chance for me to serve and to become, to empty out whatever is inside this body so that I could channel and deliver whatever comes through when the right Dharma, when the Zhengfa is called upon. And I realized that I had this amazing seat that only Heng Shan and Heng Lai shared with me, which is facing all those people requesting the precepts and the instructions. I was the only one, even the Uenos were facing the Buddha, but myself, Dharma Master Heng Shan, Dharma Master Heng Lai, got to see the faces of all of the preceptees and the students who came to CTTB for Shifu's dharmas, for Shifu's light and his setting of the precepts and the 42 hands. And how wonderful, how totally amazing to see and to experience all of the folks who came for those. Just heart-filling. And I wanted to share one moment, which was after the lay bodhisattva precepts were transmitted in the morning, the men gathered back in the Confucius Hall. And Cliff, who is working on the Chinese translation broadcast today, had his camera. So they said, hey, let's get photographs with the monks, with the Heshang of all 93 preceptees, one by one. So I stood there, and one by one, all 93 of the new preceptees came up to share a photo with myself and Jin Chuan and Jin Wei. And I got to see the faces of these men who had just completed a week of study and had gone through a powerful ceremony, kneeling and bowing and requesting and repenting and absorbing and kneeling and bowing again and listening and responding. Neng Chi Fao, Neng Chi, can you uphold it? Yes, I can uphold it. And had come out the other side with their hearts cracked wide open. And one by one, they came up, and I held their precept certificate, and a photo was taken. And to this day, it's just, not even 10 days ago. So I guess you could say right this minute, I can see those faces so clearly. And people's hearts were wide open as they had gotten what they came for. They had come for the light of the proper Dharma, Zheng Fa Guangming, and they had found it. And seeing, men from China, men from Taiwan, men from Vietnam, men from Norway, men from Australia, men from Ukiah, LA, from Sacramento, from Seattle, from Vancouver. All of these men, some of them, I was among the oldest there in age, but there were some elders, there were lots of strong 40-somethings, men who had said, this is something I want in my life. I want these guidelines. I want this level of cultivation to be my new standard. I've looked at the playthings of life. I've looked at the worldly values, and my decision is I want more. There's something more, and City of 10,000 Buddhas is where I want to get it, and I got it. I saw that in these people's faces, and these men came up one by one. These are doctors and coders and carpenters and builders and fathers and grandfathers and decent men who had said, I want these precepts in my life. And they came and they got them, and I was able to hold the certificate with them. It was profoundly moving, and just, goosebumps to be part of that pilgrimage that they had invested so much of their life in for a week at CTTB. and got it. Boy, it was pretty inspiring. And Cliff is there, snap. Okay, next, snap, snap. Okay, next, snap, snap. 93 times. It's great. Okay, gonna call it tonight a little early so that I can get to the airport. The plane takes off in a couple hours, and I want to be on it. I do. Let's do our Sanskrit mantra. Send it off. The Olympics has begun in Paris, which is joyful, but not everybody can. Not everybody has the opportunity to watch and to take part, to enjoy vicariously the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat that is the Olympics. So for those folks who are experiencing hunger tonight, or grief, or folks who are depressed or lonely, we can recite this mantra and send the goodness out to them. I will see you next week virtually. We'll continue with Sudhana's pilgrimage. Bhikshu Hayun is going to tell him about the bodhi resolve. Marion, have you got any orchestra news for us?
No.
The poster's out there on the board, and I wondered, what would it take to get the orchestra fired up again?
We used to have a big orchestra here at BBM, and we play traditional music with instruments, and we are looking for more interested musicians. You don't have to be good at what you do. If you're interested and you want to learn how to play traditional, beautiful Chinese music,
let me fill in for what and you take over. Marian says that there is a traditional Chinese orchestra here at Berkeley Monastery, and people are invited to come and investigate. You don't have to be musical or good at the pipa or the erhu or the yangqin at the start. So go ahead, take over.
And so this little girl here, can you hear me? This little girl here is welcome.
Can you,
You're all
Marian,
welcome.
is it turned on? You hit that, is the green light on that button?
Everyone is,
Nope,
hello, hello?
nope. It comes green when it's on. Okay. Yeah.
Hello?
Go ahead.
You hear me now?
Better.
Oh
Yeah.
my God. Okay. Okay, this little girl here is welcome. Anyone else here is welcome. You don't have to learn how to read a note. We will teach you. That's how I started. So it's a lot of fun, and it's going to be every Saturday, the last Saturday of every month here at BBM.
Nice.
Right after lunch. So there's a flyer out there that you can see, or you can pick up some flyers. But everyone's welcome.
So it's the last Saturday of every month.
Yes.
Here at what time of the day?
I think it's 1 to 3, right? Orlan?
1 to 3? Okay.
So Orlan's part of it. He plays the Zhongren.
There we go. Zhongran.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll teach whatever you want.
Yeah. So the orchestra began with Mr. Gan. People know Mr. Gan from CTDB. He drove down for years and years. And after a while, it became too much for him to drive. But Marian and Lai Ting and others kept the spirit going. And the instruments kind of flow according to people's interests. You're a Dizi player, right, Marian?
Right.
Plays the transverse flute. And there are erhu, guzheng, yangqin, ran, drum. John Fo played the cello for a while. Then it broke a string and nobody repaired it. So we have a cello if anybody wants to play cello and can repair the string. So okay,
Right.
there's a
Don't-
poster out on the board if people want to know more, right?
Yep,
Is that
it's-
poster still, the numbers still connect?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes. And
Awesome.
it's for other, you don't have to be a member of this congregation, this church, or this temple to...
You do have to show up, though. You can't do it virtually.
Just show up.
No. Yeah, we can't teach it on Zoom. So, okay, this week it needs to be said less than a couple of weeks ago, but do register to vote. Doesn't matter how you vote as much as that you vote, and you can build the world you want. So do register. Okay, can we bow to the Buddhas right from where you're sitting? Here we go. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master. See you all next week from Australia. Bye bye now.